In the early to mid-90s, the internet was a mere child, and there weren't any sites like Newsarama, or The Beat, or CBR, or Bleeding Cool. You could snag a free copy of Comic Shop News from your local store, or you could pick up an issue of Wizard magazine, which would always tell you what was hot, what was upcoming, and see what your copies of X-Force were worth. Now, in one of the issues of Wizard, I read a 3-page article by Craig Shutt about a creator named Terry Moore and his independent comic book Strangers in Paradise. In 1996, my comic tastes had begun to change a bit. The glut of collector's comics, these massive superhero worlds that were reborn and redone, and 90s mullets, well, they had begun to wane my interest in comic books quite a bit. But this article about this little independent comic, it really appealed to me. I liked what Terry Moore had to say about the world of his two main female characters, Katchoo and Francine. They were high school friends. Francine just wants to love her boyfriend. Katchoo just wants to be with Francine. And when Katchoo meets an interesting guy named David, she wasn't expecting him to fall in love with her, because she hates men. A few months after reading that article, I went to the comic book store looking for some graphic novels I could bring with me when I moved overseas. And there they were, 3 Strangers in Paradise graphic novels. I grabbed the first trade, pieced through it, and noted that this was already the 5th printing of the book. I bought the 3, packed them up, and boarded a plane. I would read SIP over there more times than I could count. And I would continue collecting Strangers in Paradise upon my return to the States, picking up the single issues and then the trades. I was sad to see the series end in 2007, but it seemed that Terry had finally found his ending. He divulged the last of the book's secrets, and it seemed that he closed the door on Strangers in Paradise forever. Now, Terry didn't stop there. He created new series like Echo and Rachel Rising. When I finally met Terry at the Pittsburgh Comic-Con, I got my own Katchoo to call my own. When Terry started tweeting some new Strangers in Paradise artwork in October 2016, I started tweeting right back at him. I let him know that if he wanted to do a sequel series with Katchoo and Francine just going out and buying a rug for their living room, I would buy that in a heartbeat. It was just days later when Terry announced he was bringing Strangers in Paradise back in 2018, right after he finishes up his current series Motor Girl. I may have squealed like a 4-year-old going to Sesame Place. I decided to take my Strangers in Paradise collection off the shelf and started to reread the entire series, something I hadn't done in a couple of years, while tweeting out some of my favorite parts of the book. I figured I'd read it once, and then, right before the new series came out, reread the whole series once again. It made me remember why I love this series, why I love the characters, why I love the story, and why I absolutely love Terry Moore. Now, if you've never read Strangers in Paradise, the book, at its core, is a love story. Not just I love you, let's get married kind of love. It's about the bonds you experience through friendship, the friends that are your family, and how strong those bonds can truly be. Now, it may take over 100 issues for that love to come to fruition, but Strangers in Paradise has always been about the journey, not the destination. When the series starts out, we are introduced to Katchoo and Francine, the 2 friends from high school who are now roommates. And the book really starts strange. An alarm clock goes off and Katchoo kills it with her gun. I mean, it's a little bit of overkill, but maybe this is the way that many people wake up in Texas. I don't know. This brings Francine running from her room to make sure that Katchoo is alright, and she is. Francine is thankful, and Francine's boyfriend Freddie finally waltzes in to investigate. Now, Katchoo is quick to put Freddie down with a low blow, as he has yet to do the deed with his girlfriend. Now, the mere mention of this irritates Freddie, who decides to once again bring up the conversation of sex. Now, Francine isn't a virgin or anything, she's just taking it slow with Freddie, and Freddie doesn't understand. The man walks out of the apartment, letting her know that he won't be seeing her tonight, and Francine is upset, especially since today is their anniversary. Katchoo tries to cheer up her very sad friend, but we soon see a scene unfold where Katchoo is being very sensual with Francine, and Katchoo is very serious here. We really see the love and or lust in her eyes, but she's rebuffed by Francine, and then Katchoo is forced to play it off like it was all a joke. Now Francine goes off to work, where she can only think about her boyfriend. Kachu decides to visit a local gallery, where she is, well, I'm not really sure what's a good word for stalked, where she's watched by a guy named David. David approaches her and tries some light conversation, but he is simply told to piss off. She leaves. He follows her into the rain, still trying to strike up a conversation. Now this is probably the exact moment that completely hooked me into this series. After chasing Kachu into the rain, David's conversation nearly fails as she's walking away. But then he says something that is charming, or daft, or both. Whatever it is, it stops Kachu. She looks back. She's smiling. You look at this panel, and you don't need a word bubble. You don't need a dialogue box. You get every emotion just by looking at her in this panel. Francine decides to make up with Freddy by showing up at his work wearing an overcoat and not much else underneath. That's probably every guy's fantasy. But Francine walks in only to find her dirtbag boyfriend trying to get it in with some office skank. It doesn't end well and pretty much drives Francine off the deep end. Meanwhile, Kachu and David, they're hanging out. You aren't really sure if David is trying to get in her pants, but Kachu makes it well known she has zero interest in men. Once again, the storytelling here is priceless. Kachu says, "I'm not interested in men, okay?" David looks over at Kachu's painting of some really built naked guy, and Kachu just stares blankly. It's so perfect. The sequence that follows all of this brings us back to Freddy, who is coming back to his apartment with a different gal who is pretty much hot to try. That is until Kachu, a very butch lesbian friend, busts into Freddy's apartment. Kachu is pissed off because Francine is devastated by what happened. Again, she went off the deep end. At gunpoint, she tells Freddy to take off his pants, and then she threatens to cut his dick off. She actually doesn't. She actually puts him up in a store window for everyone to see. And this action, of course, brings a massive amount of police to Kachu's doorstep to arrest her. Brought down to the station, we meet another character who will eventually weave in and out of this tale, Detective Walsh. Now, I'm already hooked on this series, but here is Walsh questioning Kachu. Looking over her file, Walsh asks her, has she ever been charged with a felony? She doesn't answer, so he asks again. She says yes. Walsh asks her if she wants to talk about it. And then we get to this panel. This panel right here. We've seen Kachu angry. We've seen her hurt. We've even seen her psychotic. But right here, this look right here, this is a woman with a past. You can see it right in her eyes. You can see that she's hiding something. Right in this instant, the reader realizes that the book may not just be about two girls and a guy. She angrily answers the detective and tells him to look it up. Look it up. The best panel of the entire series, if not of all time. From this point on, the series grows and grows as we learn that Kachu has had a secret past that no one knows about, even Francine. And as the drama plays out between the growing cast of characters, Strangers in Paradise delves into embezzlement, addiction, fear, deception, prostitution, disease, violence, the struggle for power, murder, punishment, love, desire, pain, blackmail, death, marriage, rape, and possibly just a bit of sex. Now, I could go on. And all that is just the beginning, the tip of the iceberg. This may be a love story, but it is an intricate web of plot, story, and twists that will continue to shock and surprise you right up until the very last issue. I can name my favorite comics of all time: Watchmen, Normal Men, My Friend Dahmer, Preacher, Bone, Mr. Scoodles, Major Bummer, Warlock 5, Box Office Poison, Blankets, Harbinger, Grendel, Uptown Girl, Ultimate Spider-Man, Exo Man-of-War, Young Heroes in Love. I could sit here all day and name title after title. But there's only one comic that could be number one. That could be my favorite comic of all time. And that book is Strangers in Paradise. There's a multitude of creators out there, but my favorite, Terry Moore. Now my favorite creator of all time is bringing back my favorite comic book of all time. The door is opening. and I can't wait to see what is on the other side. This is Irish Weekend for Two Guys, One Review, and I'll see you next comic.
Yeah. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. This is what we came